Hello friends, in this video we're going to look at this Sony CDP-35 CD player. This is dated on the back 1986. So it's early in the history of CDs, which were originated in 1982. So they've been around for a couple years, but maybe were just beginning to be kind of widely adopted by then. I bought my very first CD player at about the same time. I wish I still had that for old time's sake, but I got rid of it at some point. I bought this in a thrift store. It was priced at $17 with half off, so that makes it $8.50. I'm going to put in a disc and see what happens. This is a play light as opposed to a play switch. I already learned something. Now we should hear a test tone come out if this is working. Nope. Kicked it back out. Oh, this is a CDR, so maybe it won't play that. I don't think CDRs have been invented yet. Looks like it rejected it. I'll play a commercial CD. This is Dave Brubeck. Gotta warn you, I'm probably gonna have to mute this on the video, so you have to take my word for it, but here we go. Oh, kicked that out too. Okay. Since we appear to have some problems here, I'm gonna skip right ahead to popping the lid and seeing what's inside. One of the things that's notable about this compared to modern CD players is it's extremely heavy. I'm guessing it has a lot of digital and analog circuitry inside and power supplies to go with, which explains it. Modern CD players or DVD players might have a similar total volume, but they're typically mostly air inside. If you've seen some of my other videos where I look at those. So now let's look inside. Well, Scooter and I haven't managed to get the lid of this open yet. There's 2 screws on each side, but this is kind of a heavier lid than I'm used to, and I think it may need some gentle persuasion. Here's one thing I noticed. We've got a little piece of plastic, and in particular a corroded screw here, which kind of suggests maybe there was some water damage. We'll see when we go inside. Well, Scooter and I had to do a lot of strategic prying with a flat blade screwdriver. Let's see what we've got. Okay. No real apparent physical damage. Everything looks pretty good. No sign of the water damage that I was concerned about. This is a very large circuit board for this kind of CD player. Of course, they got smaller and cheaper as time went on. I think ultimately some of these went for, you know, in the $30 range when they finally reached the bottom of the price. Excuse me, kitty. Everything looks good here. We'll try it out separately with a CD again. See what happens. Okay, turn it on. Let's see what's happening mechanically here. Spinning about like it did before. It's ultimately rejecting it. Hope I haven't damaged my Dave Brubeck CD. This is a very fine audiophile CD, by the way, if you're looking for one. Looks like I'll either have to research this some more and fix the problems, or else maybe write it off and say it's not worth the time. I think we can at least take some more screws out and kind of see more what's going on here. Maybe that'll help somebody else troubleshoot theirs. So we'll do that next. I got the main circuit board pry loose. I had to take out some of the screws on the front bezel just to kind of get it loose. It was just needed a little bit of extra room. So on this side we can see a lot of surface mount components. These are probably the digital ICs and memory and signal processor and things, kind of a guess. And on this side, you'll notice this has the so-called DIP packages, dual inline packages. So in 1986, we were in kind of a transitional era where DIP packages were still common, but surface mount had begun to arrive on the scene. And they've set this one up as a mixed circuit board. This is a one-sided circuit board. Apparently on the other side, we've got these jumpers here, which sort of act as a pseudo circuit board on the back side. And we can see topologically some of the things that are going on. This is the power supply section, lots of big capacitors and some regulators with heat sinks. This is the back of the audio output here. And these blue stand-up pieces are labeled LPF, and there's two of them. So we can reasonably guess that these are low-pass filters. These appear to be kind of a hybrid integrated circuit with these kind of lumps on here. We've got literally lumped elements. And here's our output op amp. So these things typically have a dual op amp. You can see a symmetry between the two channels. We've got various conditioning resistors, and these transistors typically are for muting. They kind of clamp the output channel whenever the unit needs to be muted for whatever reason, such as when you hit the stop button or something like that, or maybe if there's a detectable. Scooter wants to get involved again. Whenever there's a detectable error on the CD that kind of exceeds the normal limits. So visually speaking, this looks fine, no problems. I do see a little bit of trace of apparent water damage or something here, but that doesn't seem to have got on the circuit board. So from a purely visual standpoint, everything is good here. I kind of suspect that the problems are in the mechanism itself, not that it's kind of mechanically rejecting the discs, but that it's not reading them well. And then the computer chip on here, wherever that is you know, pushing them out as a reject mechanism through some sort of logic. The motor belts here look fine. Here's a transformer, obviously part of the power supply circuitry. We have a little bit of standard conditioning circuitry for the AC input. Now I've already looked inside here, and Scooter has too, in the laser assembly with a flashlight. That looks good. You know, the kind of ongoing theme here is there's nothing about this that's suspect from a visual standpoint. And you know, with nothing obvious jumping out at me, I might have to think about this as a salvage unit or resell as is. Might be worth like $30 on eBay for that. You know, maybe not worth messing with. But what do you think, Scooter? I guess that would buy a bag of cat food, wouldn't it? So I still haven't decided what to do with this, but I think our next step is going to be to take the motor and tray assembly out and kind of do further visual inspection on that. Now back to the circuit board. One thing that can happen with these, you know, this unit is nearly 40 years old, and the capacitors can potentially go bad if they're overstressed. These electrolytic capacitors typically bulge in that case. You know, one of the first visual inspection things to do is look for bulging capacitors and replace those. I don't see any here that are bulging. And this type of, you know, call it modern electrolytic capacitor from the, 40 years ago, these should last kind of indefinitely if they don't get stressed by some sort of power surge or something. So there's nothing to be concerned about here or replace on this board. One thing that might be kind of interesting and might be a salvage project for another video is to kind of co-opt the output section of this. Now, as a point of technology evolution, modern CD players don't have these type of, this is a fairly complicated analog low-pass filter, and the reason is that they use higher sampling rates, which greatly relieves the filtering requirements, and basically they can use a very simple RC filter at a much higher frequency. So this type of hybrid stand-up filter is really, a relic of this era from the early 80s, and, probably got replaced somewhere in the late 80s or the 90s as sampling rates increased. So whenever you see something on a CD player, like one I just did, a Panasonic CD player, it said, 192 kilohertz sampling rate. What they're really doing there is they're upsampling the 44.1 kilohertz that's on the disc to a higher rate, and then at the higher rate you don't actually gain any information in the sonic sense, but what you do is remove the audio artifacts from that the D to A converter would produce up to a much higher frequency, which gives you a lot more range to roll off. And one of the reasons that these early CD players didn't sound good is exactly on this filter, is this kind of aggressive low-pass filter, might color the sound in some way. And so from a performance standpoint, this is probably not a champion at all compared to modern players. I have looked at the specs of this, and it seems to be quite good on a specs basis, but there might be a difference between specs versus sound. Here's another side of the back side of those hybrids. It's kind of hard to see, but you can at least see the lumps there. If you go backwards from the output to the audio section, we arrive at this large IC PCM54HP. It says BB, which means Burr Brown. Look this up. This is the 16-bit D to A converter. So if I do want to replace the input to this to sort of test the audio section separately, and that might be what I end up doing if I can't get the overall CD player to work, it'll be fairly easy to just lift pins on this and, substitute in some input RCA jacks somewhere. So here's another point to look at. These blue wires go to the front panel and seem to be located near this large IC M6404A. I'm guessing that's kind of a microcontroller for the front panel. This is probably some sort of driver for the panel display. That's a guess. We also got a sort of a power IC of some kind here that's probably to sort of run the servo motors. You can see they've done some nice color coding here. Orange seems to be going to the drive assembly. This red one, I'm guessing, is kind of power to the front panel. And everything can be easily disconnected here except the main power supply lines here. So it might make sense for me to kind of extract this intact. Wouldn't be that hard to unsolder these, but maybe leave the power supply connected and then work with the board separately. So having removed all these connectors, I can extricate this motor drive assembly. We'll do that next. It may turn out to be not a great idea to have left it with the tray out. So that's one of those things you learn along the way. But anyway, it won't be that big of a hardship to plug all this back in and get the thing to go in. Maybe I can do that with some sort of physical coercion here. Let's try it. Oh, okay. Good. Well, now that we've got this thing fully apart in sub-assemblies, I think the answer to why it's so heavy is just plain that there's a lot of metal inside. The case generally seems to be a thicker gauge than I'm used to. We've got a piece of metal right here in the tray mechanism, which is pretty heavy. Some big motors. We've also got this linear power supply, including the big transformer. I've forgotten, but maybe newer units have a switching power supply. Save cost and weight and so on. So there isn't anything in particular that makes this heavy, but it's just a lot of heavy stuff. Here's the drive assembly, which Scooter is keenly interested in, especially if I wiggle the cables. It had these 3 large screws holding it in. Not too hard to take out. Let's do a quick inspection of the bottom. Again, nothing apparently wrong. We know the drive motors work both in terms of the tray operation and spinning the disc. So as we look at the tray, we can see the different motors that are involved. This is the spindle motor. This is the stepper motor for the optical head. I'm surprised there's a lot of slop in this. There's a little cutoff switch here at the back. It's a leaf switch. And this drives the tray in and out. So from a repair standpoint, you know, I could buy a parts unit on eBay and, you know, maybe begin replacing pieces. Probably won't go that far. I'm kind of getting more and more interested in the idea of using the audio circuit board, like I said in the last section. So that's probably how this will turn out. One of the points to remember with this type of unit that's kind of implied in what I've already done is you always want to start with a visual inspection, because that's always the easiest way to find problems if they are, you know, visible. So in this case, there's nothing wrong with it. Right, Scooter? And while I talk, you can entertain the people at home. So I think this is going to be more trouble than it's worth to attempt to repair, since the problems are non-trivial and I would need some sort of new parts or, you know, replacement parts from another unit. So I'm going to go with the plan I proposed earlier of co-opting the audio section of this. And of course we can leave the power supply and things intact. A lot of this will kind of be inert. Maybe reuse the case for, since it holds it nicely. And I think we're going to make that a separate video. That's kind of a project of its own. So look for that in the channel in the future. Please like and subscribe. That really helps me out. And this ends our video. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.